in the morning. Which is sort of the season's changes upon us.
But I think, when have you ever seen combretums and things turning yellow in March? I mean, it's like
True.
one of these really early autumns that is totally unexpected. And I think that's mostly got to do with these cold temperatures that are coming in.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we've had quite a wet spell in this area for the last couple of years. So dry spell's been on the cards.
I don't know when we last had a drought. For me personally, the biggest was back in the early 80s, but I believe back in maybe 2007, I think it was 6.
It was a little bit dry, but we still got. I mean, I was down south then.
I was in the Cape. I'd come back from Kenya and I'd been in the Cape, so I hadn't been here for a few years between about 2001 and 2007.
No, it was dry, but it wasn't. I don't know if it's going to be it wasn't as dry as I think it's going to be this year.
I think this is a drought coming.
Yeah.
I don't think, there hasn't been enough rain to fill up the dams that are going to last. The dams already are looking so low.
I mean, we watched a buffalo today almost walk the whole way through Buffelshoek Dam.
Really?
And he was not even up to his neck. He went through the middle part there, which was quite...
But that's strange, because we've seen elephant almost submerging. I always thought it was so much deeper, because...
No, it's not with that spot where they were submerging, just off to the right. I think there's a hollow there where the hippos and stuff sit in. But
where that termite mound
is, off there, but he crossed the other side. I mean, walked straight across that wide section.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see the buff cross Gari Dam.
Yeah.
They walk across and they're not even sort of shoulder height, shoulder depth.
It's gonna be interesting. Well, I know it's a bit tough for the animals, but it does make our job a little bit easier. When it's dry, tracking's easier. You can see more in the grass. So it does make our life a little bit easier.
It does. But it's not only the tracking; it's the dependence on
what water there is.
Because so many of the little pans and waterholes and mud wallows that would still ordinarily be around at this time of the year, they've all dried up. I mean,
we found a really interesting one this evening.
Yeah.
While we were looking for Karula behind Buffelshoek Dam, on the fire break there, as you drive across that eastern drainage that goes in, the eddies have excavated there, but it's still seeping. So there's still water. There's a little seep there, a little perfect little puddle there. Oh, there he is.
One of the mantis.
Yeah.
Bye. Come back. Sorry. Is that sort of on that western arm of
on the eastern arm of Buffelshoek, but on the fire break.
On the fire break?
On the fire break, so between the 50 metres from
right, I know where you're talking about
Buffelshoek cut line, yeah.
Yes.
And I looked in there, because I mean, today was, we were desperate for Karula, being her birthday.
I know, it was,
and
so many people were trying to...
I walked that block where she was last seen. I walked up both arms of the drainage line from the dam to the fire break, and then I walked both edges of the drainage line, trying to see if maybe she was lying up on the edge, just looking for a track to start following. And then we heard Franklin alarming in Buffelshoek, so I stopped and I thought, Jesus, Franklin sounded really, really upset. So I walk in there and I see a slender mongoose. And I'm like, okay, it's not her. Come back, but then they start going again, but the slender mongoose has gone away. So I go back and I climb the terminal line and there's still nothing. But when a leopard doesn't want to be seen,
a
leopard doesn't want to be seen.
But are we sure that it was Karula?
Apparently.
Because then there were reports of Karula being seen in
Koro. But that was yesterday morning.
It's a bit, well, it's not out of the ordinary, and it's not impossible, but it is a little bit far for her to have travelled.
Because she was seen in Torchwood last night, heading that way.
That's true. She was on the access road,
and we found the tracks on Cheetah. We found female tracks on Cheetah Cut Line, and heading general direction was sort of northwest towards Buffelshoek when she went into the block.
The weirdest thing is that I found female tracks on Zoe's road, and although I couldn't find anything, I was with Scott. It was when Scott was with me on camera. It was the same morning. It was yesterday morning, I think. Friday morning.
No, it was Friday morning.
Yeah. It was when she was seen east of us, and I was wondering who that female. Maybe that was Tundi that came in onto that end of the world. But I did a similar thing today with Treehouse Dam, in and out of that drainage line, and I got every now and then unfortunately, we get a little bit, it's not necessarily confused, but every now and then we just get stumped.
That was me this afternoon, completely
you get
stumped.
that last track. You can be on foot and you find that last footprint, and you'll do a big loop, whether it's roads or game paths or patches of sand, wherever it may be. You might find a print, but sometimes there's nothing.
And I mean, you can see from us following quarantine this morning, he went north, south, east, west in the space of an hour. So, I mean, he went this way, he went that way, he went this way. So, like...
You could forget about predicting.
Exactly. So, I mean, and that was a perfect example this morning.
Yeah.
But the lines have been quite interesting.
Yeah.
While you've been gone. So, the Nkahumas have lost members and refound members and lost members and refound members. Yeah. And now they've crossed into Manuleti.
They have?
Yeah, they crossed the last tracks Ephraim had yesterday. This morning. He had tracks of them near Jordan's, where they were last seeing at Kaimanzi or Big Dam, that side.
Yeah.
And they went right up to the Manuleti boundary and north.
That's interesting, because they're going to invariably encounter some cats up there that are not going
to enjoy. And that area has got a high density of lions.
It has. It's funny, there's a high density of lions and a low density of vehicle pressure.
It is very low density of vehicle pressure there. I think there's only 2 lodges up there.
Yeah, there's Pungu and Tswalo.
3. And Honey Guide.
Honey Guide. I don't think Honey Guide would come down this far.
Oh, 2. But
I don't know. When I did a stint at Honey Guide, although I think the Honey Guide that I was at, I just heard it.
Yeah. No, it was an Ellie. No, it was an Ellie.
I've only got 1 ear, so I'm not.
Well, we got. All the impalas have now decided it's safe to sit around us.
Well, no kidding.
We're surrounded by impalas, but there sounds like there's an Ellie down here somewhere. I just heard an ear head shake. We'll just keep an eye
my right ear is the only ear that can hear, and I think my left ear, because this ear is deaf to certain frequencies from the army, and this ear hears everything. And this time I normally have the earpiece here, so right now I'm speaking, and it sounds like it's coming from inside my head because I can't. Let's change the subject.
Yeah, but so back to the lions.
Yes.
So and then I spoke to the head guide from Sibambili today.
Yeah.
And there's sticks. We're heading this way from that side.
Well, that might have been why I found a track, but yeah.
And then there were some other lions that they're not sure who they are down Cheetah Plains.
Okay.
So there's other lions around.
Did they give you a composition of the lions?
Just 2 females.
2 females.
The sticks is 2 females and 4 or 5 sub-adults, or like about a year old.
I've only seen, when they've been here, since I've been back, they've only been the 2 females.
This is just what I was being told by the guys at Touch Rugby
adult
today.
And a younger female.
Okay.
But we've seen them, I think, maybe, 2 or 3 times. Since I've been back 2 or 3 times, if we're lucky, that they've been back here. But I think Peter and Hayden might have seen them a few more times before I got back.
Okay.
Sticks used to be here all the time. I mean, Sticks have been right here.
And the funniest thing is that the Sticks Pride I know from 2006, 2007 was 9 or 10 adult lionesses, like 8 cubs, and apparently the Majingalans took them apart, killed most of them.
Yes, I think Alex in fact was with me when Alex was here, and Seb, and there was one time when we had 2 vehicles running. We had the one vehicle that had, I think it was Gunda, if I'm not mistaken, that had this 3D rig on it, and I think Seb and somebody else was, it might have been Alex, that was on Jigger. This is Jigger, by the way. Pardon? What's that, Alex? But anyways, there were 4 of us, and Herman. Yes, maybe Herman was with me too. But we had the Majingalans eating a lioness with Twin Dams Road. That little track.
Was that a Sticks? Was that a Sticks?
One of the Sticks.
Oh, okay.
That was probably towards the end of the Majingalans' destruction of other prides.
It's quite strange because the lions that came in before them, the Mapokos, did the same thing.
Yes.
I mean, I watched the one kill, mate with the corpse, and then eat the lioness.
Well, that's bizarre.
No, it is. That's why he got the nickname Satan.
Okay, well, that's bizarre. But that just goes to show that animal behavior is nothing that you can predict. You can never say what is going to happen when a foreign male takes over a territory. We all believe, and we all are led to believe to a certain extent, that the males will come in and they'll take over a pride and they'll kill cubs up to a year, and it's almost like we're reciting it all from a single observation from a single book. And when have you ever seen that?
Never.
It's different every time it happens.
And depends on the area as well.
Exactly. Depends on the lion pressure. What you beetles.
Look like a click.
Just by the way, our bench is covered in termites.
If we start jumping, it means we've got ants in our pants. Because it's ants and termites.
Well, the termites are trying to retreat, and it's the ants that are trying to catch them, and I think the ants might find us somewhat competitive for their termites. Yeah. But anyways, it's interesting how the lion dynamics have changed, but also interesting that you've experienced some of the same lions from further south to the lions that we've been experiencing here. And it's wonderful that we've now got this continuation of not only knowledge but history of knowing where cats have come from and experiencing them from another part of the Sabi Sand.
Styx was one of the biggest prides in the sands at a stage.
Yeah, Styx was. I think the Gumas were always bigger. They were, since I've been here, bigger than the Styx. I'm going to have to ask for help from viewers what the composition of the Styx was when I arrived, because I guess it just all merges with all the pride, especially those up at home.
And you see so many lions.
I know it sounds.
I know it sounds
like,
terrible, guys, but yeah,
we're talking about them like Impala, but it's not that way at all.
Because there's lions. I see lions in Thornybush, then I see lions in Tamvati, then I see lions where my parents live, and then we see lions here, and then
East Africa,
Botswana, and just
There's another subject that we both mentioned today, Gabon.
Gabon, yes, first lion seen in
20 years.
20 years. So the last lion officially shot in Gabon was in 1997, in the southern Bateke province. And I actually had when I first went up to Gabon, we had big conversations. I was like, there have to be lions there, because there are lions in the Congo. So there's a big section of savanna that comes into the rainforest there, and there were historically lions there, but with poaching pressure and human pressure, they disappeared. And there's remnant populations in Congo, and it is a young dispersal male. I've seen the photograph. He looks probably about 3 years old, which might not be. What's your ears?
Yeah, I'm watching.
Yeah. Might not be the best thing, because I don't know if he's going to find any girls in that area, but you never know. The last, there's an organization called Panthera who studies and monitors cats all over the world.
I've seen a vehicle of theirs in Hoedspruit.
Yeah, no, they do. They've got a leopard project ongoing in this part of the world. And the head of their program for the rainforest in Gabon, he spent 6 months looking for lions down there, because he got told by locals there were lions. He went there and they took him to the tracks, and there were hyena, spotted hyena. And I don't think, because people haven't seen the lions for so long, they get
excited.
Get very excited, yeah. And they found actually active hyena spotted hyena den. Right. And then about 7 months later, in the middle of Ivindo, which is far away from any savanna or whatnot, the first record of a spotted hyena in the middle of a rainforest.
Wow. But I think, having seen camera traps coming out of not only Gabon but all over sort of that area of West Africa, that there are all sorts of things that are coming up on camera that...
Well, this is not supposed to be here. Where did it come from?
The what?
They just appear. They're not supposed to be there. Yeah.
Yes. So animals that have become so secretive because of the human pressure and because of the population pressures of or deforestation, the limiting of their habitat, have become so secretive and so sensitive perhaps to humans, and I suppose the wave of destruction that we bring along with us, that they become so secretive that it's only with the advent of camera traps and things that we are able to actually photograph and get
and the terrain up there is just beyond, like, just being able to move through it is nearly impossible.
Well, this is, we all dream of, every naturalist, we all dream of going into rainforest but you've told me how...
It's not so much fun. It's thick and it's hot and everything bites you.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But we're just moving back on. We're been having an incredible streak at the moment.
I know.
Today is 14 days where we've had cats every day. No, we did this last week, and I was like, oh, we might be in trouble. Oh, there's a big click beetle. Get away from the fire. A big one.
There's a dead one I wanted to bring on drive today.
I love them. They're one of my favorite horses.
It's a big male.
Yeah.
Okay. Insects normally go on the hat and they can fly around.
Let's say, 14 days in a row we've had cats. There's only, I think, 2 drives in that 14 days we haven't.
Right.
And one was a last minute on Cheetah Cut Line, 10 minutes before the end of drive.
That sort of reprieve. In
the evening, in Kumas, thank goodness. But no, it's been really good. And then obviously lots of ellies, great ellies around.
It is the time of the year. I think historically, if I remember correctly, this time, although the dams are normally a lot fuller, at this time of the year going into April is when a lot of the family units that use this area, after the bulls have all been here because of the marulas in January and February, that these family groups tend to come in and they quite extensively utilize the area. They use the round leaf teak quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Elephant candy.
Elephant candy, yeah.
It look like lollipops. They strip it up.
And the reverse. Yeah. But it's been, I can't believe it, especially being away and you guys, I'd get the odd update from friends who were on Facebook, even though when I was at home I didn't have it, or I was at the Bush Pub and Inn where I was staying in Wi-Fi there, just catching up with what you guys are doing, and I couldn't believe it. And dogs.
Yeah.
There was one.
Dogs, there was one good dog sighting.
But just the cats that you've been, and the fact that the cats have been here, because so many times in the past, especially like the kahumas or one of the leopards, they'd come onto Djuma or Gowrie, they'd come onto the property for maybe a day, and they were off again the next evening, unless that was a case of the Matimbas or some of the male killing a buffalo and having enough time here to finish eating buffalo.
The lions have been sort of like that, on and off. And the Kumas have been struggling a little bit. They've been hungry for a long time, and they were literally marching these huge distances. We would see them cross at Sydney's Dam.
Yeah.
Then they would pop up bottom side of Torchwood.
Wow.
And then they would pop up coming in across Cheetah Cut Line into us in like the space of 48 hours.
No, that's
so they've been. We were wondering whether the Birminghams were pushing them or whatnot, but I got the update from the guys up in Manieti. The Birminghams are sitting at Tinswalo. They're miles away.
But that's interesting then, what would be pushing lion to cover so much, unless there's a threat of...
Because that's what we thought, but there are other males around that are making them move so big distances.
Very interesting. But having said that, we went through so many weeks, in fact, I can't even remember, we've been counting how many weeks, how many days we've had cats, but I don't know if we really counted how many weeks and how many days we didn't have any cats. Or that there wasn't a single leopard track. We couldn't find a sign of a leopard on the property for a couple of weeks. And now, luckily, I suppose most of the last 2 weeks, the last 14 days have been leopard, actually.
Yes. And we've all sort of 4 of the regulars. Mvula, quarantine, this is the first time for me, but I think Scott had him around Treehouse a while ago.
He seems to be spending more time south.
Yeah. And then Karula a couple of times. Scott had some great sighting of her on the Steenbok Kill, up on
I saw photos
Rebecca's Philemon's Tip.
Yeah.
And then we had Kunyuma for nearly 4 days.
That bushbuck kill.
And the bushbuck kill.
That was just before I got back.
Yeah, that was spectacular. He had such a playful leopard.
Yeah.
Even though the snarl,
I don't think that snarl is aggressive.
It's just almost...
Sometimes the ears go back, and sometimes he is a little bit aggro. But sometimes that snarl is just I don't know.
Yeah, and then Brian and I found him in a cave, like one of these undercut caves in the riverbed. He was right behind the roots in there, and we were looking for him, walking, and I went walking, and then suddenly he sits there and he goes out of the cave. We're like, oh, there's a leopard next to us. But anyway, I think
it was the same thing today on the dam wall.
Oh, exactly. There's monkeys alarming. Oh, leopard next to us.
I was behind you and I was watching because I'd seen the leopard. Both Andrew and I had seen the leopard, And I think you were concentrating on us behind you, or you
I was looking where the monkey. I was trying to see where the monkeys were
you
looking.
were talking to me on the radio about where you were going to go, I think.
Yeah.
And we could see you react, and it's like there was the
No, but right next to me. Yeah. But anyway, I think we should try and get some questions in.
If there are.
If there are, yeah.
That's a good idea.
Otherwise,
Is anything-
because we can keep waffling all night.
Yeah, we could. Okay, so Jessica in Michigan. Oh, the strangest or weirdest thing from Jessica that you've seen, either here at Djuma or
Well,
elsewhere.
I'll let you go take this one first.
It's so hard to find, to think of something off the top of my head, because I will, once again, can talk forever, can think forever about what it is. The top of my head is hard, because nature is just that. Every single day there are strange and wonderful things that happen. Every single day, what I call the gem of the day, and it could be a feather, or it could be a really strange sighting of an insect, or it could be something doing something I've never seen before. But it's like a sunset. You can have a most magnificent sunset and think it's the most beautiful sunset, and then there's going to be another one, and you just can't choose between the two which one is better. So experiencing nature, because nature is so phenomenal, it's kind of hard to say so. But as that question came through, I suppose one of the most intriguing things, one of the things that'll stick with me for a long time, I might have mentioned it before, the Rufiji River flooded. And Brent has been to the Selous, so we got common ground in a number of places, the same as with Scott, because Scott's also been to places in East Africa that we've been to. I think is what makes us sort of click in a way, that we understand certain things about places because we've all been to them. But the Rufiji came down in flood. It was 98, it was El Nino, and the lakes burst. In fact, the Rufiji changed its course completely. It flowed stronger up towards Nselekela, whereas before it was sort of flowing straight into where old Impala camp was. So it changed things, and when the waters subsided, eventually after the flood line had subsided and things were sort of getting back to normal, there was a colony of banded mongoose that must have been stranded in the reeds on the opposite side of the camp, where the entrance to the one lake is. And now the river did a big 90-degree bend, and at that bend was the entrance to a very large lake, but it was a rather narrow entrance. It was only probably about 50 yards wide with a little narrow island in the middle, and then it broadened out into this big lake called Nselekela. And right at that point where that entrance to the lake was the strongest flow you could find. There was tigerfish. It was
Good
the
tigerfish.
strongest.
I've caught some big tigerfish in the Rufiji.
It was very, very strong flow, but as soon as you went into the entrance to the lake, it was still water, and the crocodiles used to hang around right there in front of the camp, because fish would either be going upstream or downstream, and they'd hit that still water, and that's when the crocs would catch them. And this band of banded mongoose found themselves on the opposite side, which was just reeds. It was reeds for probably couple of 100 acres of reeds all the way up towards Bear or to the other side of it, not quite, to Lake Manzi even. But it was quite an expansive area of reed, and they must have somehow, this colony found themselves there, and they got to the edge of the still water just off of the flow of the river, and the only way for them to get out was to cross the river to where the trees were, because they probably hadn't seen trees for gosh knows how long. And they decided to cross. There were 8 of them to begin with, and 5 of them went into the water. 3 of them stayed behind, and within seconds the crocs caught all 5 of those mongoose. And I know it's not the kind of thing that one wants to remember when a question like that is asked, but it is. It was a strange.
Very strange.
It wasn't expected. It was. We hadn't been out on drive. Hadn't gone out. I can't even remember. It could have been an afternoon, or could have been during lunch. But we were sitting always outside in a tented camp, and we saw them coming. We could hear them, their distress calls, because they finally broke through of the reeds. It was almost as though they hadn't seen land other than the reeds for days on end, because it was such a vast area of reeds. And suddenly, across this little channel, and it was quite a deep channel, it was, I suppose, salvation for them. And it was like cheering on swimmers in an Olympic race almost, because as soon as the first one entered the water, the croc started moving in, and We just hoped one of them reached the island and the crocodile actually lunged out of the water and grabbed it off of the island. And one develops a little bit of a rapport with mongoose, I think. I think Brian can...
I had pet banded mongoose, so...
Oh, yeah, so you understand it.
Yeah, I do.
And Brian and Andrew both filmed the surrogates, the meerkats.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of the name. In Botswana, you develop a rapport with these little things, and although I might not have known that little colony, it was still so sad that 5 of them, and the other 3 refused to cross, so they were stuck in the reeds, and I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if that's what the question was about, but that's the first thing that came to mind when I was asked.
It's a difficult one. Actually, mentioning a crocodile is one of the strangest things I've seen. Is the only thing I've ever seen kill a honey badger.
Really?
A crocodile. And the only thing I've seen a crocodile not eat. I think he bit it and it just got a full spray from it. Anal gland, and the croc just left the honey badger right there. And nothing else ate it. Not hyenas, not anything. But I think the strangest sight, it's actually probably one of my favorite sightings of all time, also very funny, was lions and pangolin in northern Botswana. We're with the pride of lions up on the Kwando River.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, we got there around 4:30, quarter to 5. We knew where they were from the morning, waiting for them to go hunt. And there was a male, probably about 18 months old, and about 4 lionesses, and the lionesses and the other cubs were much younger. And, sorry, not a pangolin, a honey badger again. I got confused again. And the lioness and the others were lying there, and this honey badger did the proper honey badger, and sort of march past, looks at the lions like, marches on, and the young male decides, no, he's going to have a go. And gets just this dust, like October in northern Botswana, dust everywhere.
The talcum powder.
Yeah, and it ends up with the lion with his paw like this, and the honey badger flat like this in the sand. And every time the young male lion lifted his paw, the honey badger, and he pushed it down again. And then the lionesses got up and they started stretching and they started walking, and you could see him going, now what do I do?
Let it go.
Exactly. So he kept, and he looked at the lionesses, and he'd look at the honey badger, and he'd lift his paw slightly, and he'd push him down again. And you could almost see this lion counting in his head. He's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and he pushed this honey badger literally almost under the sand, like so hard, and jumped as high as he could in the opposite direction. Honey badger turns on, chased him for a good 200 meters, but could never catch him, not fast enough. So, and like complaining, making so much noise, until the lion got far enough away and the honey badger left him. That was one of the strangest, funniest sightings I've ever had.
Before you mentioned there was a honey badger when you still...
pangolin, I was thinking, I was trying to think of weird sightings.
Yeah, I thought of, what came to mind was a very similar situation in Sabi, way back when. Lion had been on a giraffe kill, and they would walk almost a kilometre to the nearest dam for water, and then go back to the giraffe kill, because they were on this giraffe kill for 4 or 5 days. And there was one evening that a honey badger came trotting across the road, just in front of a young lioness. She'd left because the 2 females were still on the kill, and she'd left the females. She was probably about 2.5 or so. And I think she was lucky, but she walked towards this water, and I decided to leave the kill and follow her. And ahead on the road, a honey badger had crossed the road, and she must have seen the movement out of the corner of her eye. And when she got to where it crossed the road, she turned to follow it, but the honey badger had actually stopped and turned around. The honey badger didn't even have to do anything. She saw it was a honey badger, and she thought, I think I'll go and have some water.
Just ignore it.
Ignore it. And but I've heard stories. Sadly, I haven't seen it often enough, of interaction between lion and honey badger. I think that's probably the only one that I can think of.
We used to see it quite frequently in northern Botswana towards the end of the dry season. There literally wasn't a blade of grass for 3-4 kilometers around the river, so you could see everything for miles at night, especially with spotlights. Yeah. Thanks for that question. That was a fun one.
Yeah. I mean, there's always...
No,
once you get to think about
start thinking, I thought of a few more, but I have to save them for next time. Just to make sure we're not being stalked.
7 lionesses and 9 cubs in 2009 for the sticks. Year and a half. 3 lionesses and 2 sub-ales after a year and a half.
Yeah.
Deborah, thank you for that information.
Thanks,
That
Deborah.
just shows how that pride within a year and a half was
Taken out.
decimated. But it, I think one of the strangest things about that is that the more we've had coalitions coming into the Sabi Sand, the less lion have bred, because of the fact that every time a coalition comes in, they're not only killing cubs, but they're killing males, they're killing adult females as well.
See, my experience with Sabi Sands has always been coalitions.
Yeah, you see, down in the south in the 80s, early 90s, the biggest was 2.
Yeah. I mean, when I started down there, I think there was a coalition of 4 Shaw's males.
Okay.
So there's always been big coalitions since I've been in the sand. But I don't know if as far as I know, because I've got the lion stats and stuff. The lion population of the whole of the sands hasn't gone down.
Changed, man.
It's stayed pretty stable. If anything, I think in the last couple of years it's actually increased a bit. Even with TB and all the other things.
But, well, I guess in general and as a whole that might be the case, but I think certainly up here in this part of the world, because we used to have prides here, that we haven't seen proper cub. Well, personally, we had this 3-year break, and obviously there have been cubs that have survived because we've got these youngsters now that are 2.5, 3 years old. So I'm not saying that they haven't been, but I think shame. I think it was a mantis. Oh, it saved itself. Didn't go into the fire. The constant changing of large coalitions of males here in the northern Sabi Sand has to a large extent prevented females from having cubs,
but I mean,
or successfully raising cubs. And I'd love to hear from people like Sil in Canada, or any of the other people who are closely watching the lion populations.
But also to a degree, having those large coalitions. So I mean, if you look at the Mapoko, for instance, once they stopped their nonsense, when they were young, killing females and doing strange things like that, they stabilized that whole area for a relatively long time.
They did, I suppose.
So I mean, having those big coalitions, although there's that initial sort of mayhem,
decimation,
they're stabilized, and having 4 or 5 individuals, they're going to be able to. They're not going to be on the top for 2 or 3 years. No. So if you're one male. The Mapoko,
they last longer.
Mapoko were there 5-6 years. I mean, that's really long and that I think is purely just the size of the coalition. There's no one who can really fight with them.
No, very much so.
But it's very interesting. Mark's playing with his click beetle.
Jeffrey from Texas, I think if I got that correctly. Hi, Jeffrey. Nice to hear from you this evening.
Good
Glad
evening.
you're watching our Fireside Chat. Wanting to know...
With the click beetle clicking.
If it's on my head, it's going to chew my hat. Yeah, it can chew into the wood. I've actually got a dead click beetle I can show you on our next drive when I'm showing beetles again. I've got a whole lineup for the next week. Jeffrey, is it only leopards that show an interest and come up to the vehicles? I think that was the question.
I think that's referring to what happened this morning.
Do leopards go out of their way?
So what happened this morning is we had those tracks, and then Quarantine came in afterwards. I saw his tracks afterwards. He came onto the cut line later. I saw them
on top of your track?
I saw them this evening when I was there. So we were following, and then we were going down Drakensberg, and then we heard kudu and monkeys behind us. So we turned around and we went back. Yeah. And then by the time we got back there, it was all quiet. So we knew there was something there. Yeah. So we drove around 3 times around that little block between Mumba, Drakensberger and Chilakatlan. I was like, it has to be here. And I saw the kudu, where the kudu were, and they'd been barking, so I was like, it has to be around here. So eventually, this one sort of section, there were testiculars alarming every single time we drove past. So I said, well, it's a bit of a long shot. I'm going to jump out of the car, and maybe if he's around, he might pop his head. So I walked off, and I checked around all the thickets, and it's relatively open there. And I said, okay, well, geez, these bimming leopards today giving me a hard time again. So I took a buffalo thorn to explain the whole spirit.
Yeah.
So I took the buffalo thorn, and I still wanted to listen. So I said, listen, guys, I'm just going to stand out of the vehicle and speak and not put the earpiece in so I can listen if something starts alarm calling again, because I find it very difficult to...
You can't hear with one
Yeah, so, and also to pinpoint direction with one ear. So I said, okay, I'm just going to listen, and I'll tell you the whole story about the buffalo thorn while I'm listening. And I'm quite convinced Quarantine came to have a look what I was doing, because he came from somewhere else, and then all of a sudden, as I got back in the car, he's sitting in front of us. Like, literally coming to the car, just obviously saw movement or something away, and he came to have a look.
I think, that's interesting. I think I can think of a few incidents when just our presence has brought a leopard out.
Yeah.
We used to have a leopard down, you might have heard of it actually, a leopard called Squelamtini. Or Squelamtini.
Squelamtini.
We won't talk about that. What was her name? It's something to do with climbing up trees. She was a young female between Inyati, Ulusaba, Delini, along the Sand River. And when she heard a vehicle, she would climb a marula tree and she'd lie down and she'd prima donna, she'd display. Or if she was in the reeds in the Sand River, when she heard a vehicle, she'd come out and lie in the sand. And it was almost the sort of, here I am, I'm on show type of thing.
That was curiosity, just to have a look.
So. But the thing is that she took it a little bit further.
Yeah.
She started climbing up onto the floorboards, and then
naughty
eventually she once reached up and touched one of the guides, and then she also reached up
a bit
and
scary.
Tapped one of the guests, and then we had to discourage her. So we had to
bang the car when she came too close.
I don't know what happened. Kwela Pezulu, maybe.
I remember Kwela female in the West.
Kwela was one of her daughters, I think.
Okay.
I'm talking 1996 now, when she was having her first. Well, she was the age of these boys now. She was about two and a half, I think, when she started doing that. And then then she had a cub with a big male at the time. She had a young male cub. The big male at the time was Mbombi.
I know.
Mbombi.
He was born at Londo's.
He was born at Londo's. He was 11. So he was born like mid-90s, about 95.
Yeah, he would have been dead before I arrived.
No.
long dead.
No, because he was 11 in... 85. So he was 11 in 96.
Yeah, I started in the Sands in 2002, 3. Yeah, he was long dead.
So it was maybe his son. Yeah. I forget. I'm a little bit older than
I think maybe just curiosity. I think it depends on the animal. So certain animals, just with a different personality, might be a little bit more curious, and others not so much.
It is one of those things. It's some leopards do, and some leopards don't. I mean, you look at the characters, the characteristic, or the temperament and the personalities of the two brothers, Quarantine and Djuma, and
perfect
example of where some do and some don't. Anyway, Sherry was asking a question: are penguins common in Africa? And they are in one tiny little place.
Yeah.
A rare sight. Is it a rare sighting? It is everywhere in Africa except for a couple of tiny little spots on the coast down in the Cape, where the only colonies exist.
I'm quite sad they changed the name of the penguin. So
they did?
When I started bird watching and whatnot, I always wanted to see the penguin, and I loved its name. But it's now called an African penguin. It used to be called the jackass penguin, because it sounds very much like a donkey braying. So it used to be called the jackass penguin, but they've now changed it to an African penguin.
But can you imagine what would happen if they called it the donkey penguin?
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't make
No, it doesn't make sense.
But yes, I think it's very, very closely related to a penguin that lives in the sort of southern tip of Australia. I think there are also penguins there.
Marconi or Rockhopper, one of the two.
Yeah. But it is rather unusual because they are southern hemisphere penguins. Well, they're not southern hemisphere.
They're the only African penguin.
Only African penguins. So far north of the Arctic, I suppose.
Occasionally we get vagrant rockhoppers, but there's always been debate whether someone's picked them up on a ship and then dumped them on the shore. But
they do cover a lot of ground.
Yeah.
We've had some very interesting data coming in fact, with the penguins, because although the colonies only exist in a couple of places on the southern coast, they kind of migrate between them, I think.
Yeah.
And it took an oil spill of all things to be able to put satellite tracking devices on penguins. And what happened was that they actually managed to rehabilitate these penguins. We've got an organization called SANCOB, and SANCOB
Do very good work.
what does it stand for? South African National. Yes, they deal with oil spills and seabirds. And I'm sorry, SANCOB.
We can't remember the acronym. It's just too
We
long.
live here in the bush. This sea's far away. There's no excuse. It's a conservational. SANCOB. And SANCOB is primarily responsible for rescuing and rehabilitating seabirds and sea life.
Sea lions, seals,
any
like
marine life that is affected by. They do phenomenal work. And it was after a particularly bad oil spill down in the Cape that they actually managed to put 2 tracking devices on 2 penguins. And it was quite incredible to have the country, in fact, involved in tracking them as they got back into their South African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds.
There we go.
National
One turned up
National Foundation.
One turned up in Gabon.
Really?
Yeah.
One of the
It's
colonists?
No. Just a random African penguin turned up on the border of Congo and Gabon.
Yeah, but then again, that could have been a ship.
It could have, but it's quite difficult. I don't know. It's very interesting. They just found one. They found one alive on the beach off the equator.
Wow, that's interesting. And speaking of it, there's probably one of the only places in the world where you're going to have elephants on the beach and humpback whales.
Yeah, and lots of whales.
Yeah. You hear something?
Yeah, I just heard something. It sounds like something walking.
Okay, you listen to that and I'll listen to this.
Okay. It sounded like something was walking down here. I think it was a hyena trying to stalk Andrew because they know he's scared. Well, that's another thing we've been so lucky with the hyenas recently.
Well, I don't know. It sounds like Alex is telling me we're sort of running out of time here. And we've only
sure.
had a few, but Eileen in Boston is asking a question. It's a very interesting question, and it's hard to really answer it because I'll start it with it depends, and that's another thing I want to find out. The other thing is that there was a bingo today, and I want to know what the bingo was.
We can find out.
But Eileen was asking, what is the best age to start children on safari? Now,
A very good question.
for me, it was I was probably conceived in the bush. Since I was in diapers, I've been.
Yeah.
But then look how I turned out. So. Then look how I turned out. So. But I think another part of Eileen's question was with regards to children. Look, there's one thing about youngsters in the bush, and you can't really help it, is that it's very, very difficult for youngsters to keep still and keep quiet, especially on an open vehicle out in the bush. And I've had some hairy experiences with youngsters making a noise or even having babies on the vehicle in lion sightings.
Scary.
And I've had to really get out of there fast because lion get very interested in a baby crying because
Same as a distress call.
It's a distress call. Steenbuck.
Very similar.
Even a scrub hare
Now.
can sound like a baby. And it's a distress call, and it's something that just, they hone in on it
Triggers
so quickly.
completely.
But there's responsible parenting and there's irresponsible parenting, and I think that there is a place. I think it's crucial. I think it would be wonderful if everybody could expose their children to nature from a young age, so that children could grow up with an appreciation and an understanding of it. Every child from a very young age should be exposed to it, should be able to feel the grass beneath, take your shoes off and walk barefoot on the grass and feel what nature and what life is. But within reason where it would be. I think we were setting up here this evening, and with the lights on, we can't really see what's behind the lights. We're not gifted with night vision, so for us, having no tapetum, no night vision, the lights in our eyes make a wall of darkness around us. And actually there was a hyena here just before you guys arrived. Andrew was setting up the lights and he saw it. I didn't even see it. I was making the fire. For all I know, I'm back to the bush making the fire. I'm not saying that hyena would have done something.
No.
But animals do recognize young of every species. And they recognize the difference between male and female. Predators do this. And I've had times at home where I've left the fire and I've left only ladies sitting at the fire. And the hyena is bold and they'll stand up and shout and clap and the hyena stands and looks at them. But as soon as I come out of my house, the hyena looks at me and it doesn't run, it walks away because it... But baboon, I've got
baboon and monkeys can tell the difference between a man and a woman instantly.
And you know what? You put a koi on and you pretend it doesn't work.
Nuh-uh. I know.
Pretend to wear a skirt.
One of my first jobs working for my dad was chasing baboons for 3 months for a pittance of a salary. But back to your
dad.
Yeah. Back to your question there. There are very specialized, tailored safaris designed for kids these days. The difficult thing is you can't have kids on a vehicle with other guests, so you need to have a private vehicle. The reason for that is with children and not being able to stay quiet and whatnot for the drive, you can't really have other people. It affects the experience. So there are specially tailored safaris that stick specifically to kids, where you all on the same vehicle. And then when I've done safaris like that, because family safaris are definitely a trend that is becoming far more than it was, say, 5-6 years ago. You just need to find the right program. So like when I've done them, I've got junior rangers courses. We go make plaster Paris tracks of lion tracks and whatnot.
Clay animals.
So and it also depends on the lodge or area you want to go to. It is possible, but you do need to do a little bit of research into it, which would be the best fit depending on the age of the children.
There's some lodges that have very special sort of activities for kids.
Exactly.
And they can take care of them. But also, I think it also would be better in some cases to be in predator-free environments at first, so that kids can learn how to behave properly.
No, see, I think in my experience, just as long as you pretty firm in the beginning, the do's and don'ts. But as you say, children are always unpredictable, which does make them difficult.
The hardest thing that I've found with children in the bush, and there are a couple of kind of strong rules at night: don't run anywhere.
Yeah.
And I know it's hypocritical for me to say this, but don't let kids walk around barefoot at night. He says, sitting barefoot at night around a fire. But
but see, if you
running
get stung,
around,
you know better.
making a noise, and especially the certain noises.
Laughter.
But how do you tell a child not to do that? Laughter.
Excitement. The same will attract predators like this.
How do you stop children from being children?
You need to keep them entertained with something else.
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done. But as I said, it just depends. You need to research it a bit.
You do, but I think it depends on how you raise your children. I think to a large extent, some people have raised the children to understand the need for quiet and the need for stillness, and I think it's not all kids that are going to run that will run around. You know, I know kids and kids who've grown up in the bush. I suppose mostly they understand from a very young age because they're in it every day. But kids that visit the bush that have done so,
there's
like
always
me from a very young age.
the one way you can just scare the absolute living daylights out of them
Yes.
before you start. If you go anywhere, you will be eaten, and they behave. No, I'm joking.
I don't know. And actually, I'd love to. I'm going to ask my mom and my dad. Actually, I'm going to ask them how it was that when we were young. Although it was mostly in camps in Kruger that had fences. But when we got to go home to the Timbavati when I was still quite young, I don't know. I think we just had an understanding that you behave. You've got not. It's not a fear of anything happening as much as it is an understanding that you need to appreciate it. And I think maybe that's the difference between the carrot and the stick. The stick approach is something's going to eat you, and it's negative, as opposed to the carrot side of things is, if you're quiet, you're going to hear some wonderful things, and the more sit still, things will happen, and learning how to. But everybody's different. As much as we sort of profess how different animal behavior is, gosh, they won't even start on humans.
Yeah, exactly. I find the animal behavior a lot easier to predict than human.
It is. Like I've said something similar in the past. Very much so.
Love the Scops eyes.
Yeah, so I think, Andrew, one of the things that made a bingo evening this afternoon definitely was Andrew sneezing.
Well done, Andrew.
But I'm sure it also had something to do with me saying it depends.
Well, but apparently I say cheeky.
You do?
Yeah, well, it's a cheeky little monkey.
Okay.
And a cheeky little impala.
Well,
apparently.
you're just cheeky yourself. So it's not surprising.
And then it's something about our hats, how we take them off when we take them off or something. I saw one of them the other day.
Okay.
Well, we
I
can
don't think anybody's ever seen me take my hat off. Well, no, I did a Fireside Chat once without a hat. Never going to happen again. But, is it, by the way, anything around us, you've been looking with the light. But it is coming to that time of the evening. I'm starving. And as you've noticed, we made a relatively small fire this evening. And we're not cooking. Partly because it's getting very dry around here. There was a little bit of a breeze when we started this afternoon, or started the fire this evening. And I need to come down here during the day and clear up some of the surrounding vegetation. And when it was all green and there was rain, we didn't have to worry too much. But it is now starting to get dry, and we don't want it to be a fire hazard, so we brought water and things to douse the fire when we're done. But I didn't want to make too big a fire that if a wind picked up, that it could damage things.
Keep us firefighting till
Firefighting
early hours in the morning.
Yeah, I'm hungry. Hey, I want to go and eat. So thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.
For the questions especially.
Ah, it's been great, and we'll see you bright and early.
Cops are calling in the distance. Yes, bright and early. You're going to be on Wendy, I'll be on Jigga.
Yep.
And we'll see you 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So thank you to Brian and Andrew behind the scenes, and Alex, of course, in final control, from all of us here at Wild Earth. Love you lots.
Night.
Bye. Bye.
Oh, bye. No, we're going to the same place.
I know. One of those customary things.
Oh, okay.
Been a good week.
It has been.
Another one to come.
More cats.
More cats.
More cats, more cats.
More elephants.
More dogs.
More
We need
dogs.
dogs. I need dogs.
Cheetah.
Yeah, it's coming one day.
Cheetah. On the fire.